Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the 114th On the Nail literary gathering organised by the Limerick Writing Centre, supporting arts and culture in Limerick since 2008. Anyone who wants to read at the open mic, please let Dominic know before it begins in approximately an hour's time. Again, I'd like to thank our hosts here at CV for the use of the venue, and I would ask that, if you feel inclined, make a small donation towards the upkeep of the venue when we send around the donation box during the intro. This month, our guests are Australian poet Philip Porter and Dublin writers Tanya Farrelly and David Butler, plus the open mic. Now, David Butler is a multi-award-winning novelist, poet, short story writer and playwright. The most recent of his 3 published novels, City of Diz, New Ireland, was shortlisted for the Kerry Group Irish Novel of the Year 2015. His second poetry collection, All the Barbaric Glass, was published in 2017 by Dura Press. Ireland House is to bring out his second short story collection in 2019. Literary prizes include the Maria Edgeworth twice, ITT, Red Lion and Fish International Award for the short story, the Scottish Community Drama, Cork Arts Theatre and British Theatre Challenge Awards for Drama, and the Filiac, Ted McNulty, Brendan Kennelly and Bela Awards for Poetry. Ladies and gentlemen, David Butler.
Thank you very much. Absolutely delighted to be here. It's a privilege. I'm going to read 2 things. I'm going to read a short story and then a little bit of poetry. And if anyone is bowled over by them, these are available for sale. As are Tanya's, might other half. So, this is a story that was written 20 years ago. And it's the first story I think I wrote that was in any way decent in my head. It's one of the ones I won the Maria Edgeworth, and it became the title story of this collection. It's entitled No Greater Love. They say that I am an evil woman, an ogre. They say that 10 years ago I was seized by a jealous rage so powerful that I strangled to death my only daughter. Why shouldn't they say it? After all, I've never denied the charges that were leveled against me, and neither did I appeal when I was sentenced to life imprisonment. And how they rejoiced, the jackals of the tabloids, to see how 10 years of prison life have robbed me of my beauty and left me an old, old woman. You wouldn't think it, but next year is my 40th birthday, though it's true you might mistake me now for a woman of 60. Nadia would have been 23 today if she was alive, if no crime had been committed. But enough of that they know nothing. No, it's not the prison life as they would have it that has stolen my youth and greyed my hair. It's not the heavy grind of routine, nor the scorn of the world, nor the faceless, chainless future that has made me so old before my time. No, that honour, for surely such an honour must be acknowledged, must have its altar. That honour, I say, must go solely to Mikhail Mikhailovich, whose living hatred has been the bane and the comfort of my life here. His hatred poisons my dreams and defeats my spirit, as surely as it has nourished and vindicated me, which you will see, you will see. It was a wild November evening when I was first presented to Mikhail Mikhailovich Sirin, M.M. Sirin, pianist. How modest the card read. Of course he wasn't famous then, or at least he was unheard of outside the closed circle of the Leningrad Academy, and his defection to the West had been such a low-key affair that the national papers had scarcely remarked on it. The first thing that struck me about him on the day we were introduced was his inordinate reserve, his cold haughtiness. This seemed so out of keeping with his cheap, battered shoes and his childish English that I could not restrain myself and burst out laughing even as I shook hands with him. I was scarcely more than a child myself, and the new piano tutor cut quite a comic figure in our somewhat formal household. But there was very little that was comic in the life of Mikhail Mikhailovich. He was a tall man, not unattractive, and there was a remarkable self-assurance in his hard blue eyes. His trousers were scarcely long enough to conceal mismatched socks, and his raincoat had a tear that ran along the collar. Yet he seemed to treat my parents with disdain and glowered at me whenever I smiled at the frequent mistakes in his English. The fact is, he saw his poverty as an irrelevance, nothing more than a ragged cover drawn over his immense talent, and he grew indignant when others failed to see this. My parents undoubtedly could see it, but I was 14 years old, and to me he was an absurd and amusing newcomer, one whose speech was as ragged as his dress. Each time he fixed his eyes on me, however, I felt my ears burn. He had at this time been in England for 7 months, all this I learned much later, having fled Russia shortly after his wife's suicide. To this day, I know little about her, except that she was originally from Prague, and that she swallowed an entire bottle of bleach when life with her Russian husband in distant Leningrad became too much for her. I never managed to learn her name, although I occasionally saw her photograph in his wallet. She was dark-eyed, petite, 10 years younger than he. I've always imagined from her dark, sad eyes that she must have loved him with that same desperation, or desperate isolation, with which he infected me. I know now that it was my own soul that stared silently from the pitch-black eyes in his wallet photograph. I was 14, but I was no fool. My mother had forecast I would be a beauty, and though I was young and without experience, I sensed already the fascination that I induced in men. My own cousin, 20 years old on leave from the army, had stuttered and blushed when he tried to talk to me the summer before. Yet how quickly did this clumsy, arrogant man, more than twice my age, gain a hold of my thoughts and a grip on my heart, which has never eased since. From the first, he was a tyrant, staring coldly from indecipherable northern eyes and demanding an impossible perfection. And how his self-belief dwarfed my own, searing it until I could no longer bear the sight of a music score, much less give life to one on a grand piano. Finally he broke me, but by that time I was already his lover and 5 months pregnant. His monstrous self-sufficiency became even more entrenched as the years passed and recognition was afforded him by the world. Make no mistake, his talent is remarkable, and even now has only been partly revealed or understood. But it would have been so much easier for me if he mistreated me. I could have put up with that joyfully, if only he would let me matter to him, if only he would have acknowledged that I ever existed for him. Perhaps he loved me in his own way, if Mikhail Mikhailovich were ever able to feel love, but he certainly never needed me, this man whose life was all that I lived for. But I'm being unfair. He always loved Nadia. From the first day I told him I was pregnant with his child, I slowly faded and ceased to exist for him. But here was life. Here was the thing itself. He took an interest in her from that moment right up to the day that they found her strangled in her home, and had watched her with that same intense, searing gaze that he had once so long ago turned on me. It was a gaze with which he had long ago forged the hard perfection of his own talent, and which would, in turn, bring Nadia Mikhailovna to perfection. And for Mikhail Mikhailovich, that gaze was love itself. With me, he had been a slave driver, a monster, but with our daughter, his tyranny took on a different form. He could extend or withhold affection with the same facility that he could play upon a keyboard, fondling her or being cold to her without uttering so much as a single syllable of reproach. I watched his love blossom suddenly into laughter as she gained each grade and moved from success to success, and the dark despair that would fall between them when she failed to live up to his expectations of her. I stood on the sidelines. I watched. I waited. The era of glasnost arrived, and Mikhail Mikhailovich Sirin was invited to return to the Leningrad Academy for a performance that would mark the culmination of his career to date. The Minister for Culture himself would be there, and who knows how many other notables of the Soviet world. And yet, with the defiant quirkiness that had come increasingly to characterize his performances, Mikhail Mikhailovich refused to go. The reason? His daughter, the precocious cellist Nadia Mikhailovna Sirin, who was to perform on that same night for the title of Young Musician of the Year, would perform faultlessly only under his loving gaze. The notables of Soviet Russia could simply wait. For 13 years I had watched. For 13 years I had waited silently as his monstrous love tried to mould our daughter in his image. And she had always striven to earn that love. She had driven herself, she had practiced ceaselessly, and she had wilted when she had fallen short of that which the pale fire of his eyes demanded. She was 13 years old, a year younger than I was, when Mikhail Mikhailovich's cold eyes had begun to burn me. I tried to offer her a child love on her own terms, when she cried at night, or when she stared vacantly from the living room window. But I scarcely existed any more for her than I did for her father. Now, at least, he hates me. Though that misdirected hatred is often more than I can bear, yet what would he be today if I simply left her? You see, the truth of the matter is very different to that which they wrote in their papers. I'm no evil woman. The truth is a precious item that I have twisted and concealed, buried with the body of our daughter, so that Mikhail Mikhailovich will never ruin himself on it. On the evening of the 14th, a wild November evening, I found the body of Nadia Mikhailovna hanging from the living room chandelier, still warm, and with a note clenched in her right fist. The note bore the single Russian word "Neudashnitsa," which is to say failure, so that there can be no doubt to whom it had been addressed. She'd even used one of his belts as a noose. What amazes me now is that throughout the next half hour I remained calm, more perfectly calm than I have been for many years. I suppose it's because all that I did was animated by a single, all-powerful conviction. Mikhail Mikhailovich must never know. Perhaps I don't need to tell the rest. They say that the greatest love a man can have is to die for someone else. But how much harder, how much purer is it to live on in someone's hatred, just so that they will never know the crime that they themselves are guilty of? Could he have lived having burned the only person he had ever really loved? Could I have lived, seeing him finally destroyed by the terrible image of his perfection? What else had I to live for? I cut down the body. Luckily, her neck wasn't broken, but rather she had been strangled by the belt that she had used. And when I had removed every trace of the living room, I dragged my daughter upstairs into her bedroom, bound her hands, and wrapped the belt she choked upon several times about the bedstead. I brought a paperweight down heavily upon her temple to intimate a struggle, and tore the sleeve of her blouse. The note I tore up and ate. Mikhail Mikhailovich Sirin postponed the Leningrad performance for 18 months, all told, but has played twice a year there ever since, to great critical acclaim. 20 years old, that story. It was actually written in England at the time that Glasnost was a bit more kind of... Anyway, there we go. The other thing I'm going to read is it's a sequence of poems that's under construction at the moment. A couple of years ago I was commissioned to write a sequence of poems. An Irish Council commission for Limerick got down, which became the Black Rock sequence, which followed the old railway line along the Dublin coast. And my brother illustrated it, and it went on to win the World Illustrators Award, and I'm going over tomorrow to an exhibition of it in Covent Garden, which is marvellous. So I got my brother at Christmas and said, let's do a sequel. So you're going to be the victims of hearing some of the poems as they're under construction. This is a Liffey sequence. And it follows the Liffey kind of out and in, and the theme that runs through it is dispossession of all kind. Wake. Wake to the clang and clamour, the cowbell and slow glissando of a tram as its heft glides across Houston Bridge, townward. Wake again to the roasting tang, the old olfactory memory, the nut waft of bitter hops over the vats of James's Gate. Wake to a new day ascending the granite quays that channel long spangling sunlight up the tidal drift of the Liffey. River gods. I'd always been horrified by the thought of river gods, their wet skin, their breath of must and decay, their muscles quirky as eels. Fetid creatures were sure to live in the long tresses of beard that dangled from their mouths, glutted and soft with their dull monotony of swallowing. And to think of the bathing nymph, how the young flesh must recoil at the first touch before she is dragged down, that set my skin writhing. I was wrong. River gods are harmless creatures, too awkward to walk on dry land without stumbling. Memorial. Their month is November, scornful of generation. Their granite crosses pollarded to a grave old covenant god. In wreath, in lapel, the poppies blow tissue thin in the indifferent wind. Their marble cenotaph, an empty tomb. Who is it we must not forget? The inestimable dead, as if endless lists could remember the sundered, the innocents harrowed at iron thorns. Are the returned who do not grow old as we grow old. That shambles was never our war, yet they fought too, our great uncles, and came back to a fractured land. Now, these Lutchen's gardens, long neglected, are reclaimed like a disputed heritage out of the silt of Island Bridge. This is entitled Rough. Like something half-hatched or premature, trailing the open cocoon along pavements neon-stained and uninterested. Like detritus, the sweet sweepers haven't lifted. Like an afterbirth of the city, stubborn and unruly as graffiti on its streams in glass and asphalt. Like the return of the repressed, the ghost of the life not lived, anemic, persistent as guilt. Adam and Eve's. Goya would know them, the gap-toothed, mouths rotted by methadone and a hunger sharper than birth pangs, bodies stripped to the bone by a famine that feeds on its own craving. Our Baudelaire, whose rag-picker, twisted by jagged days, stumbles like a poet through the debris and vomit of a callous city, and finds only in wine the kind god of oblivion. What comes of the fruit once bitten? The mind is its own place, and in itself can make a heaven of hell, a hell of heaven. Dockers, 1930. First light, the descent from the tenements, flat caps and donkey jackets, shoulders hunched against an easterly would skin you. Keen-eyed, skint, eager for the scrimmage about the rough pulpit to catch the reed, the foreman meting out who works, who idles. A hard graft for the chosen, scant light aslant through moiling dust inside the dusky hold of a collier, where rope-muscled, calloused hands rough-handle shovel hafts, scraping, angling, hacking a rascable black-flecked phlegm until, begrimed like pantomime blackamoors, they emerge to carry their thirst like a wage and pay out the bitter tithe, the matchbox shilling that buys the wink and nod. It's that or starve. Evening. Evening settles like a fire in the grate. Now is the hour when red lights stream westward and bulls float like spirits touched with purgatorial flame. How many bridges here to James's Gate? On how many bridges a squat, cardboard sign and polystyrene to catch a casual charity, the weather cudgel faces lit by a gaudy sunset. Cat's eye. City lights quiver like aspen leaves in the slow licorice river. The wind has shivered a glass half moon into shimmering slivers, into silver elder scribbling under where, cat-like, the halfpenny bridge has overarched its old arch rival. And then the last of the sequence is return. Return to the cardboard lair, to a subterranean dank, to the soiled rough sleeping bags packed liminally. Return to the rumour of wings under train rattle rolls. Along the paving, pigeons patter, pollocked autumnally. Return again to no man's land, to a country of sleeplessness. Return to the grey-scale anxieties that prowl nocturnally. And I was once told that poetry readings, the best thing you can ever say is, I'm going to finish with. So I'm going to finish with one final poem on the theme of Brexit. And it was published in the Irish Times in January. It's called The Empty Sound. It was on Limerick there last week as well. The Empty Sound. That morning, the tide kept on going out. By noon, the corrugated floor stretched out past eyesight. Come on, my father said, let's see how far we get. Our tracks meandered miles across the sand before we turned. All summer, parties arrive on foot from Anglesey. Along the way, the enterprising set up stalls. Things lost are found. Storm lanterns, lobster pots, lorgnettes, cavernous hulks, the U-boat, a squid engulfed. Migrant seabirds coast in ghostly shoals. A distraught moon plates all as though searching for something mislaid. No one would be surprised to read dead mariners walked. We've begun to forget the sea has ever been here, until the rumours. Low thunder over the horizon, a salty breeze, the tracks of vendors decamping, a deepening unease. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, David Butler. Tanya Farrelly is the author of 3 books, a short fiction collection, When Black Dogs Sing, winner of the Kate O'Brien Award 2017, and 2 psychological thrillers, The Girl Behind the Lens, US Top 20, and her brand new release, When Your Eyes Close, HarperCollins. She holds a PhD in creative and critical writing from Bangor University, Wales, and teaches at the Irish Writers' Centre, Dublin. Tanya Farrelly.
Thank you very much, as David said, it's lovely to be here, and thank you very much to Dominic and to my good friend Edgar O'Dwyer for suggesting this event. So thank you guys. So what I'm going to read this evening is a few different story extracts from my collection, When Black Dogs Sing. So the first one is actually the title story, When Black Dogs Sing. I'll just give you a little bit of a lead up to the point where I'm going to start reading from. I wrote this story after watching a documentary one evening about a couple whose teenage son had disappeared on his way to a friend's house early in the evening. I think it was just 6 o'clock in the evening. And I was just thinking about it afterwards, and I thought, how horrific that must have been. And so I decided I'd write a story based on that from the mother's point of view. So in this story, the mother and father are divorced, and the dad has just returned to the house to help the woman to try to figure out what's happened to their son, Lucas. Any news? Ray asks. He sits opposite her, pours tea into her mug and then his own. She shakes her head and looks away so that he doesn't see the fear in her eyes. She knows it has been there lately. She's seen it as she stood in front of the mirror and dressing for bed, trying to block out the voices telling her that Lucas might never come home. Ray sighs, lifts the mug to his lips and drinks loudly. For a short time they sit in silence, each one afraid to voice their fears. When he arrived 3 weeks before, they had sat at this table, and she had told him everything she could about the last time she had seen their son. He'd made suggestions, the two of them carrying out their own investigation that always led to the same place, nowhere. Have you been up at the Reynolds place? Ray puts his mug down and looks straight at her. I've been outside checking on the dogs. You know you can't keep doing this, Carla. I'm not doing anything, she says, but she doesn't look at him when she speaks. Tom Reynolds told me that you've been going up there, that he's seen you standing outside the house at night. She says nothing. He says it'll have to stop, that he doesn't know anything about Lucas. He didn't just disappear, Ray. Her voice trembles. You can't go accusing innocent people. Why not? She says. He sighs, exasperated, and a small rational part of her knows that there is some truth in what he's saying, that she has no idea what has happened to their son. He felt bad telling me. He said he can't imagine what we must be going through. But you can't go prying into other people's lives, Carla. She looks at the ground. You must think I'm crazy, she says. No. Ray stands up and rinses his mug at the sink. He pauses as he walks past, squeezes her shoulder, and she almost puts a hand up to touch his. She raises it a little and then lets it fall in her lap again. Upstairs, Carla hears him bumping around in Lucas's room. She imagines him getting undressed, sitting on the edge of the bed, looking around at his son's things and knowing that he doesn't belong there. She pictures him spinning the globe on Lucas's desk, jabbing it with his finger and wondering where on the earth his son could be. Carla sits there and drains the last of her tea. She glances at the bottom of the cup where the tea leaves are scattered in an uneven pattern. Her grandmother used to read these. She remembers women coming to the house in the hope of uncovering their fortunes. She never believed in such things, still doesn't. She doesn't believe that some gypsy woman can reveal the whereabouts of her son, but she's almost desperate enough to try. Overhead, the bumping gives way to silence. Ray has gone to bed. She stands up slowly, rinses the mug, hangs it on the wooden stand. She takes the black dog's lead from a drawer, and he rises, knowing that it's time. So I'll leave that one there. As David said, you want to know what happens next, you have to buy them. My publisher, when I was launching this book, he said, never read a full story, read the extracts, and they want to know what happens next. So the next extract, it's actually a short story that was kind of inspired by my own school time in many ways. You start thinking back to things. And it's a story about a friendship, and it's a girl who made a very special friend, which was in 5th year in school, and he only joined her class at that point, and she kind of wondered why. And it turned out that he'd been living in quite a prestigious, a lovely house in Dalkey, in Dublin, and they'd ended up then living in a council housing estate where she lived, and she wants to kind of know what happened and how he ended up there. So he takes her out to Dalkey to see the house that he had lived in before. We followed a set of steps down to the beach. It was low tide, but there was a wind and a couple of guys were out in the bay with surfboards. It reminded me of one of those Australian soaks, except not as warm. So I tried to button my skimpy denim jacket against the wind and tug the hair that was blowing in my face at the same time. Roscoe ran happily in front, smelling seaweed and sea life washed up in the strand, oblivious to us. That's it, do you see? That terracotta house. Can't see much of it, I suppose, from here. Donald pointed upwards, and I shaded my eyes with one hand and followed his pointing finger. The house was high up on the road we descended from, down all those steps. There was a garden too, palm trees swaying behind the rocky wall at what I imagined to be the back of the bungalow. Why did you move? I asked. We were walking now, leaving the house behind. There were families on the beach, small children running around, fascinated and terrified of the water. They ran to the edge and squealed when a small wave washed over their feet. Donal looked serious now. The old man drank the roof from over our heads. He had his own business, the house, everything. The business got into trouble and he remortgaged the house to try to dig it out. But the problem wasn't business, it was him, pissing it all away. Now he's supposedly on the dry. Donal grunted at this, disbelieving. It's only a matter of time, of course. And then I'll go home to find my mother crying, things smashed up, people. Donal picked up a bit of stick and threw it for the dog vehemently. I swear I'll never drink. Not when I see what it's done to him, to all of us. How old is your brother? 12. I never see him around the house. Remy has Asperger's. He doesn't really mix with other kids. He likes numbers and things, facts. He has an uncanny ability to memorise them. Mam has a set routine for him. Anything that goes against it really upsets him, like the old man's drinking, but then that would upset anyone. I was distracted by the closeness of Donal's hand, which occasionally brushed mine. I itched to take it, to feel his big fingers close around mine, but I didn't dare. My parents separated when I was 3, I said. Yeah? He stopped walking to take off his glasses, lifting the corner of his t-shirt to clean the lenses. His eyes were the deepest blue, lashes dark as night. He'd already started shaving, and a few black hairs stippled his jaw where he'd missed them with a razor. What happened? I turned my gaze to the moiling sea. Same thing, drink. My mother didn't want me growing up in that environment, so she got him out. I don't remember much about him. Where is he now? Dead. Hit by a car walking in the middle of the N81 at 3 in the morning. Jesus. Yeah, I suppose it is tragic, but it didn't affect me, not really. He may as well have been a stranger. Roscoe had stopped ahead. He waited now for us to catch him up. He'd chewed the stick into pieces. Donal kneeled to pet him. The dog put his paws against his chest, making him lose his balance, and the two of them tumbled into the sand. I met Remy a few days after that. One of the bedroom doors was ajar. Passing it on my way to the bathroom, I heard a voice. 1,000,000 Earths can fit inside the sun. I paused in the landing, not sure whether he was talking to me or if maybe there was someone in his room. When I looked up, he was sitting on the edge of the bed, a book in his hand, looking directly at me. He bore a strong resemblance to Donal. I wasn't sure whether I should go in or not. I stopped at the door and looked in. You must be Remy. Neutron stars can spin at a rate of 600 rotations per second. Wow, I didn't know that. What are you reading? Slowly I entered the room. Remy didn't look up. He showed me a picture, a vast sky filled with millions of tiny blue and orange dots, of cloudy masses of constellations. I sat on the bed and peered at it. Remy didn't react. Space is completely silent. There's no medium for sound waves to travel through. He didn't look at me when he said it, and I wondered if Remy liked the thought of living in a silent, uninhabited space where he wasn't obliged to communicate with anyone. And I'll leave that one there as well. So the last piece that I'm going to do, it's a story about a rather toxic friendship. So I won't say too much about it. I'm going to read 2 short pieces from it. You're late, she said. Louisa Sadowski was sitting, hands cupped round a large white mug, glaring at me. She put the mug down and pulled at a stray thread hanging from one pink-striped fingerless glove. I began to laugh. Her abruptness had become so predictable. 2 more minutes and I'd have left, she stated. Her nails, metallic gold, tapped a tuneless rhythm on the wooden bench before her. Tell you what, I said, let's not bother, shall we? I'll meet you another day when you're in a better mood. She made a sweeping gesture with one gloved hand, just missing her coffee mug. No, you're here now. Get something. We were sitting in the outdoor section of the cafe. I was less than 10 minutes late, and what's more, I texted to say that I would be. Now I ordered a coffee from the waitress and shivered. Jesus, Sadowski, you would have to get a table outside, wouldn't you? Does that mean you're back on the cigarettes? Even as I said it, she was rummaging in her bag. She took out a cigarette skin and began to line it with tobacco. I wouldn't if I hadn't been driven to it. Meticulously, she sprinkled and spread the tobacco before tonguing the paper and tamping it down. How is Kev? She tossed her head in annoyance, flicked her lighter and inhaled on the cigarette. He's such a fucking mummy's boy. Her words spewed in a haze of smoke as she exhaled through one corner of her red mouth. Just because she's on chemo, it doesn't mean he has to be at her beck and fucking call. A pulse kicked off in my head. My own mother had died of cancer the previous year, and I still had constant nightmares about it. Nice, I said. I suppose you said that about me too? Her hand went to her mouth, and she leaned forward to take my hand. I'm so sorry, she said. I didn't think. It's just he really winds me up, you know? The waitress arrived in my coffee, giving me the opportunity to take my hand back. Louisa didn't get family bonds. She had a turbulent relationship with both her parents. She had a brother too who didn't speak to her. She'd never told me why, but I had a good idea it had something to do with some caustic remark she'd made about his wife. I know she didn't like her. In the 6 years Louisa had lived in Dublin, there'd been no contact between them. I don't know why you don't just finish it. You never have anything good to say about him. And to be frank, I don't know how he puts up with you. Well, why do you, she shot back, if I'm such a horrible person? Her green eyes teared up, threatening to smear the perfect black line around them. That was the thing about Louisa. She was soft beneath the spikes. There was no way I'd have stayed friends with her otherwise. I'm just going to skip forward a little bit into this. So as you can hear, Louisa's not too charitable about her boyfriend. She's always giving out about him. And she's not too happy when he unexpectedly leaves her. The buzzer went and I let Louisa Sadowski in. Her eyes were all puffy from crying. Her newly cropped black hair made her face look even paler than usual. What happened? I asked. She was more mad than weepy now. We had an argument. I told him if he answered the phone to his mother one more time. I mean, she rings every time we're in bed. I swear, it's like she knows. And of course, Mummy's boy has to answer. I said nothing. It was going to be hard to support Louisa, not when I was silently cheering Kevin on. So what did he do? Nothing. Can you believe it? He said nothing. Just walked out and slammed the door. That was 2 days ago. Look, it's probably for the best. You told me yourself how much he winds you up. She leaned in, cat's eyes narrowed. But you don't get it. He ended it. He doesn't get to end it. I do. The week passed and Louisa heard nothing from Kev. She texted him umpteen times and called him as Manny. Maybe he's lost his phone, I told her. She glared at me. He hasn't amnesia, she said. He knows where I live. By Saturday, she'd become frantic. I brought her out for a drink, hoping to take her mind off things, but she obsessed all night. At around midnight, she looked at her watch. Right, I can't take any more of this, she said. I have to find out what's going on. And how do you propose to do that? I asked her. Let's go over there. Louisa, you can't. You've done it before. It didn't do you any. I'm not going to knock. It's Friday. He won't get home till after 1. You forget. I know his routine. So we're going to watch the house. See if he comes home alone or not. Louisa, come on. That's stalking. It's unhealthy. Think of it more as a stakeout. You know, I won't be satisfied until I find out if he's met someone. If he has, then that's it. I let him get on with it. She grinned. Right after I've keyed his nice, shiny Skoda. He'll recognise the car. He won't. Because we'll take yours instead. You haven't been drinking. Kev lived in a 3-bedroom house, the value of which had plummeted in a crash, leaving him in negative equity. It was in the middle of a long block of identical houses, and I had to slow down so Louisa could point out the right one. Now what? I said. Park on the opposite side, she said. Not this close, but somewhere we can still see. I parked outside a house with a high garden hedge, but I felt twitchy. Whoever lived there could see us clearly from the upstairs windows. How long are we going to sit here? Just until we see him go in. He'll get a taxi. He always takes a taxi home on a Friday night. A light went on in the house we parked outside. I saw the slats of the blind pulled apart as someone looked out. What if they come out and ask us what we're doing here? I said. Shh, here's the taxi now. We watched as cab slowed at the bend and then passed, taxi plate unlit. Not him. My bladder was beginning to ache. Louisa. Can't believe I ever went out with him to begin with, she said. She rummaged in her bag, pulled out her tobacco and began to roll a cigarette. Not in the car, Louisa. She glanced around. Won't make any difference, she said, eyeing the rubbish strewn on the floor. There's new life forms growing in here, Kath. She finished rolling, but didn't light up. At least Lenny was good looking, she said, but Kev, did you ever hear from him after? Lenny? No, not so much as a text. What was it you two fought about anyway? What do you mean? The disappearing act, the dating site, remember? Louisa frowned. Oh yeah. What do you mean, oh yeah? You were the one who told me about it. She looked at the cigarette between her fingers, clicked the lighter and waved it near the tip. The cigarette smoked but didn't catch. She placed it between her lips. Louisa, shh, maybe this is it. The dazzle of headlights as a car rounded the bend. Instinctively we shrank in our seats, but again the car failed to slow and disappeared, red taillights fading like embers into the night. Louisa, you did see Lenny's profile on that site, right? She shrugged. You're obsessing over him. I had to tell you something, didn't I? I couldn't listen to it anymore. Night after night after night. And I think I better leave it there. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank God.
That was the cliff-hanging ending of Tanya Farrelly. Philip Porter has spent much of his life travelling for pleasure and work, which is reflected in his poetry. A first-generation Australia of Greek and British heritage, he's never felt entirely at home anywhere, a sensation he enjoys very much. Growing up in the industrial western suburbs of Sydney, he became acutely aware of the profound disadvantages that face children who are out of the mainstream of wealth and opportunities Australia offers middle-class kids. He is involved with the NGO West Worlds, which supports young writers in the West and raises funds for them via the poetry dinners he organises through the North Shore Poetry Project, which he convened several years ago as the poet in residence at the Willoughby Hotel and the Incinerator restaurant. Philip facilitates weekly poetry workshops and monthly readings. He has a modest bundle of poems published in the USA, Australia, Britain and New Zealand, and has also co-edited 2 anthologies based on readings at the poetry dinners. Philip's earlier degrees were in political science and Spanish, but several years ago he completed an MA in writing, where he was reintroduced to the power and subtlety of poetry. Ladies and gentlemen, Philip Porter.
Thank you very much. Thanks very much for your invitation, my friend. I had to travel 12,000 miles any time to read a poem. Are you sure you two wouldn't like to come and finish your stories?
Oh, yeah.
It worked. I mean, you won me. Firstly, you lost a pretty important poet a few years ago, a guy called Seamus Heaney. And 4 or 5 days ago, we lost a very important poet, Les Murray, the redneck buffhead from Banya, and he was loved around the world for his straight talking and simple way of putting things. He stirred people up because he said the things that people didn't want to hear, and said it very directly. Sadly, he was very badly affected by bipolar, and I heard him read on many occasions that only once did it really work out, but that added to the salt of it in a way. But on the 30th of August 2013, I think it was exactly, that Seamus Heaney died, and I heard that, and I wrote this poem immediately, and we had 2 weeks later a poetry dinner, and I had a chance to read this poem, and a lovely Irish friend read 2 of his poems, and we still remember that day very much. So Seamus Heaney died today with a simple note: Noli timore, timere. Don't be afraid. To his wife, not the world, on a phone, not scratched in peat with his father's spade. A husband's final words to the woman he loved, in an ancient language that shapes and leavens the English of his poetry. A good man by all accounts, who loved all language and the messages it could carry. Committed sense maker, not obfuscator. He took us to the heartland of the ordinary, a 9-to-5 man who had seen poetry. One less to keep the barbarians from the gate. And given the circumstances of living with Donald Trump, I thought that just might be appropriate. Just before I start these, I suppose I've structured this in 2 ways. One is that my work over the last 10 years has been working on a memoir, where I'm doing it in poetry, prose and a screenplay. I'm blending those 3 together. And I'm doing it from the perspective of time and memory distorting things. I'm 71 years old. Obviously no one else in this place is that old, but there you go. The last 10 years have been extraordinary. Unless you've done those last 10 years, maybe you haven't experienced it, maybe you have. But every turn back, every look back, every feeling and event looks different, quite different. And that's what I struggled with in my poetry. So I'm trying to pull up feelings and events from when I was quite little and express them like a child, and at the same time put in there the perspective and knowledge of a person that's a lot older. So this first 3 poems, it's from a group of 15 poems that tries to capture very early days of growing up in the western suburbs of Sydney. The old man was a rubber worker in the local factory, good years, lovely mob at the American rubber makers. But the first poem is called The Blue Lady Lamp. It all depends upon the Blue Lady Lamp, encrusted in dust next to the double bed. Then Rubber Worker. This comes from a series of poems about the old man and about the area that we lived in. Even melancholy men must work. He followed way out west the purple garden map of morning glory, from inner city slum to Parramatta, with a wife and half-made family. At 8, our street died every night. Rows of hibernating houses, windows flickering the TV screens soul-like eerie blue, monitoring the pulses of dads dozing in their penny dreadful armchairs, still on tick from Waltons, Murrays or DJs. At 11, our street shrugged as bundles of men like chrysalis in overcoats slipped from their council-owned cocoons. Tributaries of workers swelled to flood. Some moved faster as they woke, others slowed to better hear a mate's remark. A shifting shoal of black-winged moths drawn to the glow of factory lights, the clang, crash, bang of their industrial Jerusalem. The satanic mills and graveyard mines that pocked England's pleasant land had transmogrified, slipped south of the equator. US tyre companies, petrochemical factories, all refineries. Names evoking friendship, nature, hope. Goodyear, James Hardie, Shell, landing in Camellia, the garden suburb of the west. This one's about my mother. That I have to add this little bit of information because it might make so much sense. And in the scroll of 15 poems it does. My father was killed when I was 17, quite suddenly, and it's trying to capture the mother's sensitivity to what might be going on here. Eros. She straightens the stubborn folds in the shirt she's ironing, and eyes the pile of other people's mess she knows will never, never disappear. She's alone for the second time. Nana is visiting to help her through her loss. They keep company with grief, not each other. A large, unimposing woman, Nana speaks the bastard Greek of refugees who fled Anatolia in the 20s. Forever displaced, forever collecting misery, even when there is none. She sits and sits and sits in a large lounge chair that could be the vehicle that brought her here, across 10,000 miles of sea and land, from the Middle East and the Middle Ages to her daughter's council house of dreams. Nana tugs relentlessly at her black scarf she has worn since the accident. Her black and gold rosary hangs exhausted across her thighs. Since her teens, when she had learned to wail at strangers' funerals, her life has been measured in crochet dollies, doilies, and miserable events. She has lost the art of quantifying, categorising pain. It's all cataclysmic. Spoiled food, a death in the family, war, door rates 10. Mildred, no longer a wife, but a widow, helps her mother down the narrow hall to her bedroom, where a candle throws licks of light across the silver-encrusted icon of Jesus, the King of Suffering. Come in, it sneers at the learner widow. Join your mother. Its spell and Mildred's emptiness are broken by the careless crash bang of the front door slamming. I'm back from a Friday night's marauding, reeking of the cheap scent of Paul Bell's sweat and Avon calling makeup. I make her a cuppa in her best Royal Doulton. We know this is the last of our late night chats. She looks me up and down, a soft, long mother smile all the way from Smyrna, creases the edges of her face. Horepsi, Pekingo, horepsi. Dance, my son, dance. You're leaving already? Give her a beer, she'll come. So that's that little group of three. And then I'm told by my Irish friends that Irish do melancholy well. And the next short 3 or 4 poems, 4 or 5 poems, is an exploration of that melancholy, depression, curiosity that afflicts most of us at some stage of our lives. I think you'll find in these readings and in these 2 books that are the anthologies pulling together these poetry nights, a kind of emptiness, a kind of echo of people wanting something, and I think it's the echo of our very hollow suburbs, our suburbia that just spreads out like in Patago from the centre. They're deadly, even the wealthy ones. So, you do something with Portugal, is that right, David?
With which?
Portugal, you've got some Portuguese background, expertise.
It is translated for you start with.
I thought, I know I noticed that somewhere, and I love the work of Fernando Pessoa.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, and he wrote an unfinished autobiography called A Book of Disquiet, and it struck me quite profoundly. And I wrote this piece, a poem of disquiet for Bernardo Soares, assistant bookkeeper in the city of Lisbon. I sit in a state of calm disquiet, like a Jew in a cathedral, a Gentile in a synagogue. Tired of thinking, I contemplate creation and do calibrations on my electronic abacus. My feet hang limp in the coolest stream. My body boils with agitation. The crow flies backwards but reaches its destination. I wander in a familiar forest and get lost. Another poem that touches that unconnectedness that you refer to, that I quite enjoy, not having a place. I'm from Utopia, nowhere place. I know it was originally meant ironically, but in Australia we have an obsession for physical place. The final high school exam that kids do to get to university, there's always a question on place, as if everyone comes from a physical place, which is very strange when we're an immigrant country, full of refugees and people who know no bloody place, and are constantly, trying to work that one out. Sidestep. We made love with the slightest sense of haste. As commuter cars crossed the Story Bridge and Brisbane squinted at a morning sun about to rage. I'd come by cargo ship and would leave by it in the early afternoon, swapping city climbing heat for an airless cabin below the Plimsoll line. Blood trickled across my chest as you stepped over me. It was warm, disarmingly intimate. The afternoon shrugged. This next one is being published in a women's magazine. It's a university publication that's looking at new masculinity or something. And the person who took it said, I guess this is a bit of a piss take, but I don't think it is. It's called Safe Hands, and it needs a little introduction. Around about 1930, a woman jumped from the Empire State Building, you know the story, landed on a limo and crushed it. Right there was a world famous photographer who took the photograph. He then immediately took it round to the major paper and it went viral around the world. She lay there with a posy in her hand, beautifully composed. And a woman called Jodie Albiston, Australian writer, wrote quite a long poem called The Fall. I start my very short poem with her 2 lines. Safe hands. She falls into her father's arms from various heights. This was a light that held her darkness from her. Hands up in a big hurrah, a one-child Mexican wave dangling from her father's arms like a trapeze artist before she turns a trick, a somersault of sheer delight. Daddy's here. I can be as dangerous as I like. These books, by the way, represent about 3 years of poetry dinners. What we do is we get a bunch of punters along that like to listen to poetry, and they buy a meal, a very good one, and we get a major poet or 2 from Australia or here, from Ireland. We've had 2 or 3 Irish poets read, and then we have local poets, about 20 of them, and they read one poem each and then open mic. And everyone drinks a lot. And if they don't get a bit pissed, I give them free limoncello. And I tell the guy running the joint, if they're a bit stiff at the beginning, give the limoncello out now. Don't wait till later. This is another little piece called She. When I was working as a poet in residence in this coffee shop, I'd sit and you'd see people. And I felt like the flaneur of the Baudelaire period. And in fact, Baudelaire wrote in Un passant, to a woman passing by, neither knows where the other goes or lives. We might have loved, and you knew this might have been. I was not so lucky. Street noise and cafe clatter fade. She sits with her family, grey hair bundled in a Hepburn chignon. Her practical, expensive glasses rest in contented functionality. She knows I'm looking. She becomes furtive in her movements, glances around the room at everything and nothing, taking arrhythmical, unwanted sips of coffee, the cup's white porcelain a shield, to peer over at me. The rest keep talking, playing with their iPhones, munching on bruschetta. She's got a frisson between her teeth and doesn't know if she should pick it out discreetly, suck it back with her tongue, or swallow it whole. I also write in little bundles when I go abroad. I travel a lot and I'll do a series. And my wife and I, Liz, were in Ikaria, the island of Ikaria, of Turkey, a little while ago. And as you know, it was named after Icarus, the guy who got too close to the sun and fell into the drink. And are there any teachers here, or ex-teachers? Yeah, any ancient history teachers? Classics? Yeah, well, that's for you guys anyway. I wrote this for any teacher, I suppose. But I wrote this for my own ancient history teacher. It's called The Waitress Who Fell from the Sky, for Tom Dynan, my high school ancient history teacher and football coach. Like Calypso, the lover of mortals and weaver of dreams, she swishes into the soul of her customers with her first look, upselling them from a scaggy Greek salad to calamari and herbs, the most expensive wine and lavish couple of others, dripped and drizzled with local honey, nuts and homemade pastry, then leavened just before baking with a touch of a virgin's breast. All this under a bracken shelter against the sun on string-woven chairs of blue, watching whirls of Aegean mist coming and going like an ancient chorus, swallowing God's on leave from the tattered pages of my high school history books. How are we going for time, mate? All right? I did time, yeah? All right?
Yeah.
Yeah, just throw that thing out. They're short poems, all those little labels are short poems. I should read this. It's called Reading the Magus in Greece for Dorothy Porter. No relative. Dorothy was a wonderful poet and died a little while ago. She was also a lesbian and a very close friend of a wonderful friend of mine. And having read the Magus in Crete back in 1970 and then coming across a wonderful book of poems about Crete by Dorothy, I wrote this. I am the flute's reed, the sharp V in the shakuhachi's throat, the too taut lyre string aching to break, the frenetic high pitch of the bouzouki weeping in Piraeus, waiting for the eight-armed squid to gnaw me with its beak. Play me, throw me to the sea. I'll return to taunt you as the minotaur eating virgins as a tax on your persistent attempts not to love me. And a bit of pain in the arse, called Pain in the Glass, a touch of depression. See if anyone recognises it. Like a pane of glass puttied into a shape and place not of my choosing, I wait to be peered through, smeared by chippy fingers, locked up and slammed to the point of shatter, incapable of affect, just seen through too easily by anyone who bothers to peer or glance in my direction. At times I break, a transparent jigsaw with no pattern, picture or the slightest narrative to give a clue. Just jagged pieces in a huddled determination to give up nothing. My father. Life had tanned and pickled him by the age of 10. A hard man, with a clear idea of right and wrong. Love was a distant thing, to beat the emptiness of its loss. But now and then it spilled out with a couple of beers, or the occasional warmth that came with the spring sun on his cheeks, or rolling on his lip. And this is a cri de coeur. You don't need it in this country. I've never met such friendliness in my life. My wife and I were in a bar the other night in Dublin, and everyone just bought us drinks, didn't they? What was it? I promised not to tell. And one of the guys was a taxi driver and drove me home for free. Wow. Yeah, he did. Well, as I got out of the cab, he said, I'm not charging you because you fucking Australians don't tip. Well, he was right about that.
Exactly right.
I gave him the tip, the old joke, change your job. So we have this lack of connection a lot in Australia where the eye, you'll meet someone's eye and the glance will turn away immediately. I haven't come across that here. So will you raise your eyes, maybe it does happen. Anyway, this is called Urban Affection. And after reading a lot of Walt Whitman, a couple of lines from him from Children of Adam. There is something in staying close to men and women that pleases the soul well. Yes, we've just met. By accident. Your glance is hesitant. You mouth hello at me like a goldfish eating. We sit like nighthawks in our Edward Hopper diner. If 90% of our DNA is the same as carrots, with whom, drunk, I've talked at length, why can't you gift me a word or just brush my arm ever so lightly? As you speak, I take a mouthful of air as you take in mine. The exquisite intimacy of strangers, caught stealing chunks from each other. An urban love poem? Perhaps, like a child's refrain, your heart might beat in time with mine. And then finally, with this little group, a tanka, a Japanese form, 5 lines, similar atmospherics of haiku, but less complicated. A breeze rustles, bamboo leaves lifts the folds of my kimono. Last night, only moonlight wrapped itself around us. And then finally, I'd like to read a couple of poems from my colleagues here. We're a group of people that, the poetry doesn't come first. I hope that's not heretical in this environment. We try to support each other by using poetry. And a lot of things are talked about obliquely or via the poem. And one good example of this is a chap, an old mate. He's 80 odd. He's been writing all his life, and we finally gave him this venue, and he writes now and reads. And he's written a series of poems, and in the Zen sense, they are clearly his dying poems. He is quite ill, and he sends me one a week. This is called Foxing. A flying fox, Pteropus polycephalus, with leather-like wings, hung lifeless, grey head down, from twin wires above foliage spires. A black shape still against the dimming light. Its fight for supper clearly over. Despite protected status, no hiatus, absolutely dead. No concertos, no paeans sounding for a requiem, naught but butcher's birds, vibrant songs of life. And finally, my colleague that co-edited this last book, The Intimacy of Strangers, Kit Killen. He just won the Peter Porter Prize for poetry this year. Kit's a wonderful writer of prose and prose and poetry. Just imagine this is really a fecund moment. I'm not lost and looking for this damn thing. I didn't organise this a little better. I was going to be so smooth. I had a job once that had a PA, and I've never gotten over it.
It's the anti-Simon.
3, yeah. Oh, sorry, 3 a.m. A more simple title you couldn't get. Along High Street, the window in the white cortina right down, the air rushing in, my foot on the accelerator, beating time to the electric fuzz of Johnny Be Good. All evening, my hand inside your jumper. What bliss. Street lights flashing past like beacons of joy. Everything went so well until you found Jesus. It never works after that. When you said, if you ask Jesus into your life, you'll never miss another green light or wait for a parking space. I couldn't help myself. I said, 2,000 years, and all it amounts to is traffic flow. And you gave me that look, and I knew, Eli, Eli, it is finished. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip Porter. We are now going to take 10 minutes approximately for a break. And then we return, fearless, to tread into the dangerous piranha strewn waters of the open mic. Thank you. Okay, folks. Welcome back to the second half of this extravaganza of erudition. First to kick off is John Pinchmid in the open mic. John Pinchmid.
Thanks, Tom. I don't know how many of you are vegetable and fruit gardeners, but I am. And for us, this is a very, very busy time of the year. I wrote the piece I'm reading tonight in 2012, and it's inspired by the fact that next to our garden is the church in our village. It uses the term answered prayers, and you're probably aware of the saying from St. Teresa, there are far more tears shed over answered prayers than over unanswered prayers. Here goes. Answered prayers in Eden. On his knees, weeding in his private Eden next to the village chapel. One October day, the gardener prayed for something even more special. Oh, Lordy, give me one new vegetable, as quick from seed to table as radishes, as tasty raw as mange tout peas, as pest-free as the rainbow chard, and as beautiful, as winter hardy as kale, as fun for children as pumpkins on Halloween, as easy to harvest as Swedes, as wise as sage, as plentiful as thyme, as prolific as cucumbers, as lovely sounding as angelica, rosemary, shallots, courgettes, and like the tomatillo, after it dies, may its beautiful skeleton cage rattle with seeds, spring ready. And as a poet gardener, it's got to sound special too. As feisty as rocket, as quick off the mark as runner beans, with the internal rhyme of zucchini, ichiki curry gourds, the alliteration of broad beans, Florence fennel. I am becala flour, Brussels sprouts, as multi-layered as onions. And as a dirty-minded gardener, I wanted to be as playfully bawdy as ripe melons, as randy as the widow's consolation cucumbers, as pun-ready as going out to take a leak. Amen. His white breath words disappeared into air, and suddenly the whole garden was overwhelmed by a strange new vegetable, as hard to weed as onions and strawberries, as ready to bolt as spinach, as tough to wash as Jerusalem artichokes, and as fart generating, as prone to blight as lumber potatoes, as attractive to slugs as lettuce, as mouth and stool reddening as beetroot, as hand-ravaging to pick as gooseberries. Oh, Lordy, the gardener moaned, looking up to heaven. It was my Eve that made me put in the body bits. If I remove them, can you answer my other prayers, please? No, he thundered. As much as the next guy, I likes a bit of clean dirt. You are punished because your wish list left out my favorite herb. You committed the oregano sin. Thank you.
John Finsmith's garden is available for study. He's very afraid. Actually, it reminds me of an episode of Alfred Hitchcock back in the day. Moving swiftly on to Anthony Meade.
Sorry, all my poems are very short. And given that there's an an Australian connection here tonight, I have one with an Australian connection. And it's called Family History. Surprised to hear of an Australian relative, Richard, who survived the Great War. I searched the archives to learn of a gunshot wound to the left ear in France and of evacuation back down under in 1918. I wonder how he adjusted to life in peacetime South Yarra. Was he able to keep the trenches at bay, or did he wake in the morning to the sounding of heavy artillery? Perhaps his mind harked back to an earlier time, when as a boy he played around the orchard at Abbey, oblivious of all that was to come.
That was Anthony Mee, and now Arthur Watson.
Thank you. I was hoping to read a poem from my new book, but working upstairs in my dressing room, I've got two sets of twin grandchildren, 3-year-old boys who are rampant and full of energy. They came up and got me just as I was finishing, and they pressed the keys and removed the poem. It was a poem called "The Old Unknown Poet Reads at the Open Mic." So I've had to rescue another poem. But on the gardening theme, I thought I'd go for a kind of garden-based one. I'm a gardener for my sins, and live in a nice place with trees and a river, and it's very, very nice. And this time of year it's beautiful. But my wife and I kind of share the gardening, and I'm the kind of horse or the tractor, and she's the brains and kind of clever, and she does the research and plants a lot of lovely flowers. And I do probably mainly vegetables. So often each year we have these kind of conflicts, or if you like, it's T.S. Lawrence's thing of a rainbow, man amongst the woman and the other, and the tension of the colours between. So between us we make a reasonable garden, and it's nice to be in it. But I wrote this poem called "The Sounds of Spring." Each spring I take my rusty garden shears and clip the sprouting privet hedge, shorten the long couch grass in the overgrown borders, snip the burgeoning fuchsia, and neatly trim all straggling upstarts and overhanging strands of green, the sun on my back. I warm to the task in hand, establishing a relaxed rhythm. Click, click, click. I meditate to the mantra of the shears, effortlessly dreaming. I am lulled by the tweet, tweet of early swallows as they swoop at ease over ancient apple trees. The reassuring cuckoo of the cuckoo and the plangent, soothing moo of fat cattle on Scuba Hill. Everything in the garden sounds promising as Eden, until I hear a distant shriek of horrified dismay and see my wife clutching a prematurely cropped winter jasmine and striding purposefully my way. So I have to make amends and work very hard, digging and planting and so on, until one day a council worker leaned over the fence. And you know what council workers are like, so there's many of them on the road, and many shovels leaned on, and they love giving advice. So this poem is called And So On, advice from a retired gardener and council worker on my road. I like the gardening on multi-channel TV. It's very relaxing. I'd never have a garden again. A garden's too much work. If you have a garden, you have to sow grass. And if you sow grass, you have a lawn. And if you have a lawn, you have to cut it. And if you cut it, well, you get cuttings. And if you get cuttings, you have compost. And if you have compost, you have to have a garden. And a garden's too much work. If you have compost, you have to plant. And if you plant, you have flowers, shrubs and trees. And if you've these, you've petals, stalks and leaves. And if you've petals, stalks and leaves, you have even more compost for your garden. And a garden's much too much work. If you've petals, stalks and leaves, you'll have beetles, birds and bees. And then where'd you be? Buzzing about in your garden all the bloody time. That's where you'd be. And a garden's too much work. I like the gardening on multi-channel TV. It's very relaxing. Monday dawns, my man. And a slightly more serious one. I've been horrified by what's happening to trees, as I'm sure all of you have. For some reason, trees seem to be being cut down. I thought we'd kind of got over that idea. You know, everyone had got over it, but still they cut down trees. So I wrote this poem in 1975, To Come of Age. To come of age, talk without rage, let your feelings flow free. Grasp the bars of your cage and make it a tree. Tap the tree very low to measure the flow. Count the rings round your heart and learn how to grow. Talk without rage, let your feelings flow free. See the roof of your cage as the boughs of a tree. And there at the top sings the bird of your soul, tiny and brilliant and perfectly whole. And the final one about trees again, called Silent Witnesses. Trees have never done anything ill. They don't mug, rape, steal, kill, or conspire the downfall of another tree in acts of terrorism, sabotage and war. They don't creep about in balaclavas to victimize another tree, plant bombs or wave guns. There is no ethnic cleansing among trees, no politics of the pine, no Sinn Féin of Cyprus, no deciduous democracy, no conference of conifers, no Ardèche of ash. They don't oppress each other with their own philosophies of God, race and gender. They have no psychological disorders, no psychotic spruce or neurotic oak. They do not teach, preach, own laptops, appear on late-night chat shows, write for a national daily, win Oscars, drink Guinness, get strung out on drugs, go to mass, sing ballads, or play for Ireland in the World Cup. They keep themselves to themselves, harmonious congregations on hillsides and valleys, beach, rowan, holly, silent witnesses of our human folly. They celebrate communion with birds, badgers, deer, express belief in leaf, beauty in blossom, and eternity in an apple. Thank you.
Maybe it's my fervid imagination, but I detected the skulking, lurking figure of literally the world's most famous gardener, Mellors, lurking in the undergrowth. Moving swiftly on there, and that was Arthur Watson, Dr. Watson. We have Pat Stat.
Thanks, Tom. This is called The Misogynist's Advice to Her Protege. Protege is spelled with an E-acute-E. Your average female is a fountain of deceit. Men are much better, so much easier to defeat. Abjure the trend of having a woman as a friend. I'm launching my next collection, a jewel collection, in July, and these poems are from this. This one is called The Tenderness of Knives, which is half the title. The Tenderness of Knives. Sick I am of falling in love, too sick am I to fall again, too sick of sanity's sameness. I want to rise, no longer fall, but rise in love, or else to fall deep down inside myself, to feel the unknowableness, the nobleness that is the stuff of bone, the marrow sparkling in the cell, the synapses of stars, the source, the code, the well. The bomb is too destructive, destroying what it touches. Instead, I need the tenderness of knives. My fingers glide like skaters on a pond, dimpling the surface, triggering follicles. Your nipples stiffen, your shaven cunt, the gash upon my senses. O Queen of fire and ice, cast open the chambers of yourselves, lest the magnifying echoes drown us in their thunder. Imbalanced force is a scorpion sting we inflict upon ourselves in our pain and grief. Each cut, each wound, each hurt is held trapped in ourselves, craving release. They scream their torment out as tortured demons in our heads, snarling, twisting, raving. Do not listen to these voices of the damned. Instead, sit with the pain. Breathe into it. Be gentle with your inner fire, lest it ignite an all-consuming fury, which, once spent, will turn the ocean of your tears to glacial beauty, unbending and unmoving, remote, untouchable, locked fast. For I am no Amundsen, and in that frigid place I will not tread. Show me instead your calmer seas, and we will sail with love in our hearts, together to reach at last a gentler shore. This is to the angel of death, Azrael. To Azrael, come not too soon to gather me in your embrace. I have much to offer yet. Though I've met you face to face but once, you are no stranger, rather a valued friend whose counsel I now see is there to hone a life that's strong, determined and fulfilled. You are ever present yet unseen, your face 10,000 different masks. From the eagle's piercing gaze and beak that feeds upon the discarnated soul, to golden-visaged Azrael, whose fierce love sears its icy touch to the bone. Whichever face you will show to me, may it be when I am ready. So come not too soon to gather me in your embrace. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pat Stack. John O'Donoghue.
Thank you. This is my first poem read in public. And I welcome Philip to Limerick, City and County and the Midwest. I spent 3 years working in Australia as a family doctor in Canberra and Sydney and the western suburbs of Parramatta. It was a great time there. This is called as follows. I wrote this in spring-summer 2004 AD instead of BC. And the poem is as follows. Our most welcome summer visitors from down south far away, built nests, building new ones too. How many broods will you have this year? Happy-go-lucky flyers, the chattering classes, no malice aforethought, come the Irish autumn, you will fly south again. Thank you.
Thank you, John O'Donoghue. Mick Lacey.
This poem is called The Narcissistic Solipsist. And for all you learned people, a solipsist is a person who believes they're a figment of their own imagination. And there was a story written about a solipsist, John Forbes. John Forbes was a solipsist. He hated his job and he had an aroused wife, and he came home one evening very cranky. He kicked the cat and broke his leg. And he was in hospital, and the nurse was asking him, taking down his particulars, and she says, what religion? And he says, I'm a solipsist. And she says, what's a solipsist? And he says, I believe I'm a figment of my own imagination. Oh, she says, well then your broken leg doesn't exist. He says, that's right, so the broken leg didn't exist, then the cat didn't exist, then the wife didn't exist, the house didn't exist. Then he wished everything out of existence, and there he was in this big void where he couldn't wish himself out of existence. So he heard a voice, who are you? And he says, I'm John Forbes, I'm a solipsist. And John says, who are you? I'm God, I'm a solipsist. And John Forbes said to God, well, how can I wish myself out of existence? Says he, I've been waiting here for millions of years for someone to wish me out of existence. So you have to wish me out of existence and then wait for someone to wish you out of existence. So John Forbes wished God out of existence. Then he created the earth. It took him 7 days, and on the 7th day he rested. So this is what this poem is about. It's 11 o'clock in the morning in 1963, and not a child's face in the house washed. It's 11 o'clock in the morning in 2019, and not a Facebook download viral video watched. It's 2019, I'm a hetero-flexible, pansexual, solo, polyamorous relationship anarchist. In 1963, I was a wanker. According to the DSM-3 in 1963, that's the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Mental Health Disorders, I was labelled a narcissistic personality disorder. In the 2019 DSM-5, that category does no longer exist, and we are very upset. So we have the Narcissistic Personality Disorder Support Group. Only problem is everybody wants to be in charge. Everybody wants to be the chairman. Everybody wants to be the secretary. We solved this by hiring a facilitator who was a solipsist. Solipsism versus narcissism. Only problem is she never turns up, but says she does. That it's all in our imagination. Nothing ever happened or will happen, is or isn't. So we tried Buddhism. Now everybody wants to be the Dalai Lama. And we meet in McDonald's every Friday because that's a fast day. And better to be reincarnated as a fish than a hamburger. Primitive capitalism versus Zen Buddhism. Solipsism versus narcissism. Manchester United versus Queen Park Rangers. The last one is, I've done before, it's changing time of biscuits and pornography. Even the colour of Kimberley biscuits have paled. They're soft and mushy, not firm, spongy and symmetrical as they used to be. Fig rolls have lost their individuality. Cream crackers crumble like crisps. A man in Ballyfermot lost his leg opening a tin of beans. Thousands go to mass in IKEA every Sunday. 40 million Americans take Prozac. 20 million dogs are prescribed it. It doesn't work on cats. Of course they don't chase after buses. I can't seem to open the wrappers on a bar of chocolate without reading the instructions first. Don't talk about milk cartons or cheese with zips. A man in Corbley was castrated to open the zip on the block of cheese. The girl in the mobile phone shop shouts. I tell her I'm not deaf, only grey, and want to buy a phone. The bank manager says no to a 10-year loan, and the cardiologist wants to be paid in advance. Everlasting light bulbs cut short, fluorescent built-in obsolescence, maintain the means of production, illuminated power savers, it's all in the wattage, the commercials promise. Erectile dysfunction, the law of diminishing returns. Viagra full strength doesn't work on cats, thank God. Makes the TV look bigger and the sea bluer though. The tiny female prostate gland, a Canadian lady told me at the Lisbon Varna Matchmaking Festival, squirts marking her territory to fend off other women who smell it. Men can't, she said. Works for cats though, sure we all knew that. A man in the US wanted to marry his horse. The Supreme Court refused, saying the animal was underage. In another jurisdiction, a man wanted to marry his camel and have full canon knowledge. But certainly not with a cat. Thank God for that. Come to think of it, a lady in the UK had sex with a cat. But it was a tiger, in fact. A man dressed up. So they had to move to Kathmandu. Miles Jackson said, pornography the canary in the coal mine of free speech. Thank you.
Very hard to describe that wonderful take on the condition of the human from Michael Lacey, but truly it can be said that he is the first living exponent of the Edward O'Dwyer School of Motoring. And now, the master himself, Edward O'Dwyer.
So let me first say it's great to have Tanya and David down in Limerick for a change. I'm going to read this poem for them because we had dinner before the event and we went for a little walk around the river, and this poem takes place where we were walking. It's called Just by Chance. This is the place we have been coming to sense. This is the hour. And yet just by chance that the stars were out that first night, and their light, just by chance, glittering on the Shannon's lurching surface. A near full moon suspended over the centre of the Foaming Bridge, just by chance of where we were stood on the quay. And just by chance it was the most brittle silence with which we had no words to shatter. Did I think to remove my coat and place it over your shoulders, brushed your neck with my fingers, just by chance of how they shook. Then surely it was just by chance the way of the tide that a pair of swans came floating out from the bridge's far side towards us. And so I learned that swans mate for life, just by chance you'd read it somewhere once, but couldn't remember where. As though just by chance you said that, did it occur to me then I may never have a better opportunity to kiss you than there and then. That average Wednesday, Limerick was the most romantic place ever, and just by chance. And so gently turning you round to face me, just by chance of the arbitrary direction of a convenient wind, your russet hair all blown back, and so just by chance the whole of your beautiful face staring back at me. We kissed our first kiss in that unlikeliest of ways. Sometimes things happen so perfectly and yet just by chance. That's the romantic one. Now I'm going to undo all of that and read something that more like what Tanya and David would expect from me. You know, I'm reading from my first book, and the funny thing about this is that I was always able to ban my parents from attending readings, or I was always able to kind of limit what they saw, what they you know. I was always able to, you know, say, oh, this is the stuff I'm writing, and then not show them stuff I didn't want them to see. But when they were, you know, they were always going to be able to go to the book launch and get copies of the book, and they were going to find out what I was up to. So, yeah, I just faced the problem head on and wrote this poem and just put it in the book. And it's called The One Worry I Have with This Book. The one worry I have with this book is the thought of my proud parents reading it. Realizing all these years I've had a sex life, and all of that time out of marriage, often even out of love. Yes, lust soaks these pages, will drip out of them and down from all the shelves and coffee tables on which copies rest, splash on impact. Like so many individual gasps of my pleasure, my lust will explode drop by drop on the floors of friends, extended family, complete strangers, and of course, worst of all, the parents who think me sinless still, spilling inside their laps even, the parting of pages, a dam breaking within their fingers, a current of lust set in full flow. Then the sweet, stale smell of détente filling up rooms, clinging to the walls of the family home where photographs of the child me are still hanging, portraits of innocence. Thank you.
Edward O'Dwyer, incorrigible as always. A book, or housekeeping now. The Poetry Circle presents on Monday 27th of May in association with Salmon Poetry a reading with three poets, Sue Love, Joe Slade and Richard Peabody. And the venue is Nelly's Cafe, Nicholas Street, Limerick at 7:30 p.m. This has been On the Nail, number 114. You heard Edward O'Dwyer, Mick Lacey, John O'Donoghue, Pat Stack, Arthur Watson, Anthony Meade, John Pinsmith, and our special guests, John Butler, Tanya Farrelly and Philip Porter. Till we meet again, God help us all. Good luck and good night. Thank you.